what do you have to learn, and how do you learn it? This is a tough question, and it starts by breaking down the different things you have to learn into categories in order to win, to succeed. And I don't like spending a lot of time on the nature of learning. There are, I mean, I do geek out about it on my own, but if you're watching this video because it's a prerequisite to, going on and learning more of the stuff that I'm going to talk about in order to get a job, which is obviously the fundamental goal of this channel, then, this might be, it might seem like extra, like you don't need it. But I'm going to start with a story. When my wife was working at a company that shall not be named, she was regularly responsible to interview people and to assess people and decide whether they were the best candidate for the job. And they used a term, an acronym called SCA. I know, you think we're going to use a mnemonic device here, SCA. Think of like, I don't know, really bad Skrillex mixes or something to help you remember it. So skills, knowledge, and abilities. Actually, that's not what ska is. You think I would know music after playing so much music. Ska is like Rasta reggae music. What, isn't it? I should probably restart this. No, we'll keep going. We'll keep going. However you want to remember it. SKA. So skills, knowledge, and abilities. And what are the differences between them? And this is actually a question to the group right now. Take a moment and pause and answer. And if we have people in the audience here who want to try to take a stab, I would love to see your comments scroll across the bottom of the screen right now. Right now, what is the difference? And you can I'm going to tell you right away, but go ahead and take a stab at what you think the difference is. Spend some time thinking about it. Why are skills, knowledge, and abilities separate? And, this really shocked me because I thought, I've spent an unusually large amount of time trying to figure out what the domain-specific model, which is a fancy way of saying the terminology and everything you use to talk about a thing, what is it for when it comes to education? And, what's the difference between a task and a skill and a job and a career and, an ability and all this stuff. So these are the kind of things that you need to know about. So the bottom line is very simple. I'm going to start with abilities. Okay. Abilities are generally the things that are innate. And while the category of ability, so let me give you an example. In a job posting, somebody could say, you need to be able to lift 200 pounds, right? Or 80 pounds or whatever. 200 is a lot, actually. There's no jobs for that. You have to be like the Hulk himself, but that's an ability, right? You have to be able to slam dunk, right? That's in the job description for several, NBA positions. If you want to, that you can't learn that. You can learn how to slam dunk and be a really short person. Purvis Short proved that back in whatever, the 80s. The point is that abilities are the innate things that are largely stuff that you just have to accept about yourself and who you are and where you are. And that is the reason I'm mentioning it first. Because taking stock of your abilities is super important up front. And I have a very sad story to share about abilities. I almost don't want to say it. Because somebody's going to hear this story and they're going to think, oh, I can't do that. But I want to mention abilities first, because abilities are the things that you need to assess very easily and quickly. Because if you don't have the ability, and it's not one of these extremely rare abilities that can be developed, such as lifting more weight, you can build up that ability, but there's going to be a maximum to that ability, right? And that goes for mental abilities too. I am in my 50s, and my ability to recall information and remember things has definitely declined. Now, there's probably things I could do to make it better, right? My ability, however, to, bike for 120 kilometers has gone up because I've spent a year and a half developing that ability. So it's really important that you know what your abilities are up front. They are the most important things for you to assess, because the abilities take a long time to improve, a really long time. And I would say something like typing is something that falls into the abilities category. Okay, because it is something that kind of stays with you. Abilities sometimes are the kind of things that can diminish depending on how if they're related to physical things. They can diminish over time, and then you no longer are qualified for whatever someone is going to trust you to do. Right? If you can't lift the minimum amount of weight, you cannot do a certain job. Period. You just can't. If you do not have opposable thumbs, there are certain jobs you can't do. That does not mean that we're biased against you or anything. It just means that the job requires us. So here's the story. I had an autistic guy, and before I complete the rest of the story, I want you to know that I have two autistic sons. I've had autistic people in my life my whole life. I would say probably 20 or 30% of the people that I dealt with for those 8 or 9 years that I was at SkillStack, about 20 to 30% of them were on the spectrum in some way. In fact, autistic people tend to be attracted to IT careers for lots of reasons. And this is not about autism. It's about this one story. And this one autistic boy's ability deficiency to do what he dreamed of doing. And this is a very heartbreaking story. I may break down telling the story. So this guy faithfully came, and I kept with him for 2 years, and he was making very, very small progress. But it was really clear that he wasn't mentally, and I hate saying this, right? It wasn't that he didn't have the ability. It was that he was going to have to work 100 times harder than everybody else to be able to do the same things that other people. And this kid's dream, on top of everything else, was to go into game development, like many people when they're teenagers, which is a horrible idea, by the way. Game development is one of the worst careers you could ever pick in the technology sector for lots of reasons. I'll put in another video. If you're still that passionate about it, fine, but just be ready. Know what you're getting into. I promise you. If you want to make games, do it on the side and enjoy it and make money at it on the side and have something else that pays the bills. Because if you make it your career, you'll learn to hate it, in my opinion. So anyway, this guy, on top of him wanting his dream was to make games. And it became really, really obvious. And, the thing that's so hard about me looking back at this is because it took 2 years. So it was about 2 years of, and I kept telling myself, when I tell this story, I'm always afraid that someone outside of it's going to say, oh, you were happy to take their money for 2 years before you told them that he couldn't do it. No, I was legitimately, sincerely trying to help him grow and do what he dreamed of doing. And the thing that sucks so bad about this story is his passion. It is very, very hard to find people who have the level of passion and commitment to do what it takes in tech, period, let alone, to have a tech lifestyle and everything, let alone to try to do it in the game development world. So when, I interview people and I make sure that before they come in, that things are, our expectations are set and met. And I definitely did that with his parents. And he had salty their parents, amazing, absolute amazing parents. And it doesn't pay the bills, no. And, so he helped, pay for your hobby or whatever. So, we had an agreement. So anybody outside watching this, I want you to understand that I was very diligent about sitting down with the parents of many of the younger people. Anyway, the adults also had an interview, but we would sit down and we would agree. Okay, what are the expectations you have of me? What do you want here? And the story ends with me having a very, very I don't even like remembering that day. I just don't. It's just so horrible. I had to break his heart. I had to tell him. I took him for a walk. And I tried as hard as I could. I was like, how you doing? And he's like, well, I'm excited, but I'm trying. And he was coming in and he was having his spirit defeated every single time he was coming. And I could see it was starting to like wear on him. It was starting to wear on his soul. Because all the other people in the group, and this is why one other reason I went to one-on-one. I wasn't one-on-one then. And, he was in the room with the rest of them and he didn't have I'd give him a personal TA and everything. And he still was comparing himself to everybody else in the room. And I could tell it was like wearing on him, on his soul. And at that point I was like, okay, I cannot have someone leave my learning community feeling like a perpetual failure. This just cannot happen. I am not having this. So I had to have a very, very difficult talk. And I had to sit down with him and I had to say, listen, I said, I see the passion that you have for what you want to do. And I know this is your dream. And I said, but I think I sense that you are getting this, but you are going to be struggling your entire life with this specific thing if you try to do this. And it just deflated him. It just deflated him. He was like, he thought I didn't have faith in him anymore. It just makes me sick to think about it. I have a really, really, really hard time with this story because I had to tell him, look, I am not the one, and it was just so hard. It was so hard. Good morning. We're making a video, just so you know. So I had to tell this passionate, wonderful, amazing human being, and I had autistic kids of my own who I had to have the same conversations with, that they were going to be struggling 10 to 100 times more. I basically had to set an expectation with him. And I had to say, look, you're not going to be able to do this. If you do this, the other people that are going to be in game development, the companies that are paying the money, they're going to go with the people that they can hire who can do the same thing with much less hassle. And it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And I said, but you know what? It doesn't have to be your job. You can do it because you like it and you can move at your own pace and stuff. He goes, yeah, I guess I can do that. And then I had the conversation with his parents as well. And, his parents, he was there because it was at the time, it was a sort of a way for him to do something because he was struggling in every other thing he was doing out there in school and everything. Everything was a struggle. And this is one thing he really loved. And I told him, I said, listen, I can see that he's starting to feel, and actually, this is one of the stories that led to me doing one-on-one mentoring. I told you about that, right? This is one of the reasons I went to one-on-one mentoring. Had I been one-on-one mentoring him, had my business model been set up to do one-on-one mentoring, this would not be an issue. This would not be an issue at all. In fact, when I went to one-on-one mentoring, I had 2 or 3 people that were similar cases that there was one in particular that was really extreme. And the parents they knew very, very much that this was going to be a one-on-one thing, and it wasn't necessarily going to be for him to get a career. But this other case was different from that. And the lesson I learned was mixing people with different learning abilities in the same room, unless you have the ability to really separate them out. If you're building camaraderie between all the people at the same time, that those people have to sort of see how each other is doing, whether or not they're competitive or not, they are going to compare themselves to one another. And the other case of this that happened, it's another short story. What happened to this guy? His parents decided that at that time that it was better for their son to go to find something else, and that it was not worth putting the pain on them. And that ripped my soul. I mean, that just destroyed me inside, because I had become a close friend of this person for the last 2 years, and I had to watch him leave. And the other story that's related to this is kind of a negative story, was when there were 2 kids. I've told this story before. There was one guy who I had been mentoring for 2 years, and by the way, what did I do about that, right? I corrected it. Here's another story that led to me correcting this situation. The next story involves somebody who had been with me, brilliant kid, really motivated, same sort of situation, no particular learning disabilities that I was aware of. And he was doing great for like 2 or 3 years, actually. And he had a really great friend who was a competitor in one of these knowledge bowls. He was really motivated. He was extremely passionate, really intelligent. And he referred him. He said, I'd really love for my best friend to join. So this guy who had been with me for 2 or 3 years suddenly had a new person in the group, right? And this was back when I thought, so because of that last story, I went from like 16 or 8 in a group down to 3 maximum. And it's very hard to maintain, a business with 3 people in a class. It's just hard, and keep it affordable. And so anyway, this group, so I said, fine, we'll go down. I'll go down to 3 as the maximum, but preferably 2. right? I said, okay, well, at least it's two people. I used to have a theory about having three. That was enough for it to not be competitive, but they would still have fun with each other. They would still have the social element of it. And because, I mean, when moving down to the numbers down, this is about abilities. Okay. So anyway, this boy invited his friend to start coming to his session. And they, after 3 months, I want to say it was 3 months. It became the person that I had been mentoring all this other time, quit, just straight up quit like that. He just left. Didn't give me any signs of it. And it's kind of, this is partially a story about me failing because I didn't see any of the signs. I didn't see him. I should have been more attuned to the signs of it. I should have had more conversations with him. But he just pulled out. He just left. And you can probably guess why. So his friend that he had invited to do all of this stuff was extremely, he had I have failed you, Anakin. Yes. He had the skills. I mean, I don't know what you want to call it, but his ability to process and to learn and to was way faster than his friend. And he, not only did he catch up to his friend, but he passed his friend. And his friend had been with me for like 2 years. And it's really sad because rather than talk to him about, well, let's look at the reasons that he's learning faster than you and what you're going to have to do to keep up, etc. Rather than do that, he just left. He just left. He just stopped coming. Never had a chance to have an opportunity to talk with him about it. And his friend stayed in it. He took over his spot and he was like really active and everything. You know what the difference was? Time. The guy that was new spent probably 6 hours outside of class, outside of the session, practicing on things. When I would give him something to do, I'd say, go home and practice this and, do these things. The other guy, the only thing he did was his 60 minutes or so every week. That was it. He didn't have any outside drive to do anything. And you guys already know the graph. It goes like this, right? That's how the graph goes when it comes to learning and abilities. It goes like this, right? But this kid who had been doing 6 hours a week because he felt like he was behind, his learning went like this, maybe a little bit, but it was a constant path up. Meanwhile, the other guy's was like this. He kept learning and forgetting. And the other one went whoop, and he just caught straight up with him. In 3 months, he had all of the same skills that his friend had. And whether it was a learning disability, no, I don't think it was. It was a difference of commitment to the learning. But I dare say that there was also some difference of ability related to that. And maybe the reason that the other person didn't want to do that stuff every year is because their ability to learn it was harder. Something about it was, innately more difficult for them. So again, the point of this video, the point of this video, of this part of the video, is the most important thing that you can assess about yourself before you jump down the path of a tech career or any career is, what are your abilities? You need to be very honest with yourself, and you need to get people around you that are going to help you assess what your raw abilities are. And some of them are going to say things that you disagree with. That's fine. Take it all in stride. You're ultimately the authority on this particular thing, but you need to assess your abilities above everything else. And once you get those, once you know that you have the ability, and this is by the way, one of those places where other people will sometimes lie to you. I'll tell the very quick version of the story with the mom who came to me. I had a housewife mom, I'm using terms that she used, who wanted to learn how to code, and she had the ability to do it, but she had no time. But the people in her world were telling her she couldn't do it. She absolutely could do it. She had the motivation and passion, but she also had a bunch of responsibilities that the people in her world decided were more important and pressured her on and made fun of her for, and so she dropped out. I'm telling you a bunch of fail stories here. Hopefully that, there's been hundreds, if not thousands of people who have successfully moved forward. But these are all situations that people, if they had spent more time assessing their abilities in addition to their motivation and the time constraints and stuff like that. In her case, I don't think it was a learning ability at all, or even a motivation ability. The lack of ability on her part was she didn't have the ability to dedicate the time to it. So it was more of a time thing, not really an ability, but still qualifies. It's in that space of like, I have no ability to change it. It's something that it's going to take a very long time for me to change. Yeah. And then sometimes you think you're interested in one thing and you go down the other one. Abilities can be stronger or different. This is another thing too. The reason I'm harping on abilities before we do skills and knowledge, which we will talk about briefly today too as well. They're easier to talk about, by the way, much easier. So the other thing about ability that I want to talk about is that when you once you have outlined the abilities, and you've identified what your abilities are that you're strong at, you will enjoy it more. You will enjoy it. People naturally gravitate to the things where they have natural ability. They enjoy it. That's what they want to do. So a lot of times your passion is also the thing that you have a lot of innate ability to do. My wife, for example, is ridiculously good artist. Oh my God. When I watch her, just like in like 60 seconds, she can like rough in a figure drawing that would take me 2 weeks to even begin to understand how she did it. And I just don't have the ability. Could I develop it? Maybe I could. It's not really a skill in that case. It's just to her, it's an ability because she can see things that I just can't see. My brain just doesn't work that way. Now I can do things that she can't do at all. She's completely tone deaf. I love her so much, but this is her words. She's 100% tone deaf, and I bought her a ukulele and she tried to play it, and it's kind of a funny story because her mom kept screaming at her, "Are you torturing that ukulele again?" She can't, she doesn't care though. She will sing, baby. She will sing at the top of her lungs. And you know how much I value music and stuff. And I just think it's cute. I think it's amazing. I don't think she's as tone deaf as she thinks she is, but she definitely doesn't have the musical ability that I have. And that's not a comparison. That's just to make the point that we all have innate abilities that we gravitate to because we like it. It feels good. We're good at it. Inevitably we compare ourselves to others, and in those when we have a natural ability, it feels good to be better than somebody else. I hate to say it, but it does, right? It feels good to be naturally better at somebody else and to say, look what my God-given abilities are. Some people would call it talents, whatever. And I do think you should discover what they are. You should develop them. So that's a lot of talk and a lot of stories about abilities. Hopefully that'll help you, beyond anything else, that'll help you become very, very honest with yourself and what your abilities are before you go charging down a path that could lead to extreme disappointment. Another story for me really quickly. I wanted to be a basketball star. I used to sit on my driveway and I would shoot hoops every day for 3 hours, and it just wasn't happening. I was too short. I didn't have the base coordination. I could do certain things, but I was never going to be a pro. Same thing with like triathlon. There was a lot of doping in that thing as well. So I did, knowing what your abilities are and musically, right? I play guitar at the fireside. I would never do so, professionally. I don't have that kind of ability. Anyway, so let's go on to skills and knowledge really quickly before we leave today. A skill is the ability to perform a specific task. Okay. And I'm going to say that again. I'm going to keep this video long anyway. A skill is the ability, not the ability. A skill is being able to do a specific task, right? That doesn't have any innate ability. A skill is something that can be learned. So typing, some people would call it a skill. Yes, you can learn to type, but the speed at which you type is based on ability. So there is a little bit of overlap for sure. But typing is a skill that can be learned, obviously. But at a certain point, you're going to be limited by whatever your baseline ability is. That's the point. So the skill stack and the beginner boost and all that stuff that we're doing is focused on, helping you identify what your abilities are so you can build them up if you need to and can do them. And sort of decide if tech is for you. And in the middle, most of the content is in the middle. It's skill related. It's setting up a Kubernetes cluster. It's operating from the terminal. It's doing a command line query from the terminal. It's using VI effectively to edit a file on a remote system. It's using SSH to go into a system. These are all tasks. These are very specific tasks, and a lot of times the tasks can be broken down into subtasks. And I do another video about this, about how this relates to like the scouting system for merit badges and things. It breaks down specific tasks into their subtasks and how you would do that. It's also the basis of all the recipe books like O'Reilly has and everything. How do I change the permissions on this file? How do I send an email from the command line? How do I make a web page? How do I populate a form? How do I store the data in a database? These are all skills. Most of the content, 100, I would say 90% of the content on this channel and in SkillStack Beginner Boost, and that's why skill is in the name, is on building the skills that go into your stack depending on where you want to go, what job you want. And of course, in the Boost, the foundational stack that everybody should have. Everyone should know how to install a Linux system. Everyone should know how to remotely connect to a system. Everyone should know how to make a basic web document and put it on GitHub. These are foundational skills that build upon one another and can be composed together. In fact, in many ways, a skill is like, and when we get into coding, you'll understand. I love this. I have some videos I started on programming humans because that's what they are. A skill is like a procedure. In fact, the term is called a procedure in the business world or in the military world, right? Like special ops. Why is it called an op? Because it's a special operation. What is an operation? An operation is the execution of a number of things to achieve a specific result, in a very organized way. It's to do a special op, you're pretty much programming to strategize a special op. You literally are programming that op into the team, and that team has to be capable of executing that op. That means there's a bunch of skills and tasks and abilities that they need to be able to deploy in order to do that. But you can break down the development of a human being, the programming of a human, or even a team into a bunch of procedures and operations that involves skills, and you can basically write code for people in order to do things. In fact, that's a lot of what systems management is. Business systems management and business analysts do, is they break down the systems. And I'm not talking about tech. I'm talking about what are the business systems that have to be done in order to produce a result. And then and they do the whole thing. And that entire, if I'm geeking out on this particular point, it's because I really love it. The idea of being able to program, to be able to program, a human or an organization by writing it. When you write documentation and stuff, you're largely doing this. In fact, I spent a lot of time on this. I'll just mention it. I might work on it again later, creating something called the Open Credential Merit System, OCMS, Occam's, as in Occam's razor. And what it was designed to be is a way to document what you need to learn. What are the skills in order to execute, to do a thing? And then you could basically, base your job descriptions as well as matching your skill set, your skill stack with the job description by having a common way to document all of that in a line item, starts with a verb kind of way, know the difference between blah, discover what your career opportunities are. All of these like one-liners, which are pretty much the same as procedures or functions in coding, if you know what I'm talking about. So stay tuned for that. I actually really would like to get with other pedagogues out there and come up with the rest of the OCMS system. I registered all the domains and everything because I think it would be really fun to itemize all the learning that has to happen, all the skills in particular that need to be learned to go with a particular role, and whether that role be web dev or whatever, and then you would have a role and a credential that's associated with that. This is what people do in education all the time. They just call it different things, and merit badges is the same thing. Anyway, so skills can be broken down. They can be itemized. You can learn to do the different thing, and they can be practiced. They can be done. You practice doing skills by when you do lead code. You practice doing skills when you do your own projects, when you do mini projects or macro projects. Anytime you're doing that practice, you're practicing your skills. So they are very easy to do, and they tend skills tend to do better when you memorize them more. And so if you're going to spend time committing abilities, of course, they're innate. And so lifting weight and stuff like that, you have to, it's either there or it's not, right? You have to maintain it. Skills can also benefit by how fast you can type, or how, being able to remember how to make an HTML page. I made a video about how FreeCodeCamp failed because it didn't reinforce the skill of making a page, right? It never stuck in their head. Why? Right? So, and they couldn't really do it. And then other people that I tested, they were able to do it from scratch, from their head. Why? One of them stuck and one didn't. So how much of this you memorize, that, skills benefit from memorization, but they can also benefit from ChatGPT or looking it up really quickly and just-in-time learning, which I'll do a separate video on. So so skills is the fundamental focus. I still think abilities is going to be the gatekeeper and the blocker for most people, so make sure you assess that. But skills is the way, being able to speak a foreign language, etc. That's where we're going to spend the time. And then there's knowledge. Now, knowledge is the know things. Like if you're having a hard time categorizing something in your notes about what you should learn, and like I have right here, like look right here, there's a bunch of knowledge stuff here. No. When the verb is know, then you know that you're dealing with knowledge. Historical context, the things that you need that give you context. These are not skills. These are, I need to know. Adding 1 + 1 together is a skill. Knowing why you need to know mathematics is knowledge, right? And some people would use knowledge with a much broader umbrella. They would use it to group all the skills under it. I like that it's broken out in the way that, as I mentioned, my wife's company, provided for. And by the way, when they were doing an assessment, they would break down the categories: ability, skills, and knowledge. And when they did their yearly assessment, they'd say, okay, what are the abilities you need, that you have, that you've executed on, or that you need to slowly work on improving? What are your skills that you need or you failed at using this year? And what is the knowledge that you need that will help you to stay motivated and have context for everything else, for the skills and abilities that you're using every day, right? If you don't have the knowledge, if you don't know about Aaron Swartz, right, how is knowing about Aaron Swartz affecting your ability to get a job? Right? It isn't. It really isn't. But it's maybe going to motivate you and help you understand why certain skills are important, right? So knowledge, the baseline knowledge in history and do you need to know about particle fever and all this stuff that happened at CERN to appreciate to use the HTML and make web pages? You don't need that, no. But having the knowledge and the context about how the World Wide Web came to be and why that solution to a problem that existed, and knowing what the problem was, understanding the problem is knowledge. And therefore, knowledge is really key to a tech career. If you do not know what solution you're making, if you're making a solution and you don't know what the problem is because you can't articulate the problem because you don't have the knowledge about why this is an issue, then you have a knowledge deficit, not a skills deficit. And that is a totally different thing. So having knowledge and knowing how to be aware of the company. So let me give you one story about this before I leave. This has been quite a long video, but I'm about to move into my role full-time. From having been a contractor, I've been a full-time employee my whole life, other than the time I ran my own businesses. But I now have a different opportunity. They call them. By the way, that's a HR word, opportunity. An HR word. The word opportunity is, this is something that you're not doing very well right now. You probably should do better on. It's the politically correct word for, you're failing at this right now. Go spend some time with it. And which is not as palatable as opportunity, right? So one of my opportunities is to get a better understanding of our team's role in the larger context of a huge multinational corporation. I'm delivering on skills all the time. Helped him create the central API for submission of all the machine learning jobs for, thousands of, machine learning models and all that are directly fundamentally related to making money for this company. I mean, it's a big deal. But can I tell you what those applications are? Do I understand where those applications are being deployed, how they're being deployed? What happens if the pieces that I built stop working? What is the impact to the overall organization? No, I can't. I can't tell you that right now. I have a deficit. I have a knowledge deficit. I have an opportunity to further understand my role and the role of my team in the larger enterprise. And that is knowledge. That is knowledge. So that concludes this video. Knowing is aptitude a synonym for skill? No, I think aptitude is a synonym for ability. An aptitude for something means that you are more likely to become proficient in a thing because it's easier for you. And the fact that it's easier for you is related to your innate abilities or to your hard to change abilities. And whether it be, you need to do more brain training so your brain works more efficiently. These are not things that can be fixed in a month of boot camp ever, right? Abilities take years to develop or to decline. So aptitude, I think aptitude falls under the abilities. If you say, well, this person, they have a natural aptitude for languages. Somebody might say that about me. I do. I have a natural aptitude for, not computer languages, but I mean, it's kind of a fun side topic right there. Is like, does somebody who has a natural aptitude for natural languages also pick up programming languages easier? I don't know. They're all syntax, right? And I mean, so that would be, he has a natural aptitude for foreign language. He has an aptitude for art. They have an aptitude for sports. They have an aptitude. I think aptitudes are sort of a collective grouping of abilities that are sort of focused on a specific type of thing, whatever the aptitude is. Like, for example, let me give you another really fun example. Anybody know Dendy? I love this example. I'll end with this one, okay? LLM usage has exploded. People are focusing on full-time focus on LoRa. I don't know about that. We're not talking about that right now, but so yeah. Last piece of this. So Dendy is one of my favorite. If you know, go Google Dendy Fountain Hook from Dota 2. It's probably one of the most, I would say it's got to be one of the top 5 moments in all of esports history. It's absolutely amazing. If you're into esports and gaming of any kind, I don't do Dota lately because it's like a drug. I would be addicted to it completely. But Dendy, who had a natural aptitude for gaming, is also a world-class classical pianist. Yeah. So you would say about Dendy, he's got the best mid lane and the best pudge, and I mean, he's just amazing, right? But he has a natural aptitude, and that aptitude for gaming also applies to his aptitude for specifically piano playing. And so he's got the ability. He has fingers that are particularly dexterous and longer. He's able to process a lot of things at the same time. So his aptitude for gaming, by saying he has an aptitude for it, it's kind of a collection of abilities, some physical and some perhaps mental, almost all of which are innate, but some of which can be developed, such as dexterity. Dexterity can be developed. Finger length can't, short of surgery. So you see what I'm saying? That's what I like the opportunity to use that example because Dendy, his aptitude, for gaming is depending on many of his abilities that have combined to make him really, really powerful for that kind of thing. And I think that goes for his ability to do music, classical music as well. So anyway, I feel like people are talking about other things now. That's cool. I think we really kind of covered this. So skills, knowledge, and abilities, or abilities, skills, and knowledge, however you want to put it. I kind of like the abilities, skills, and knowledge. I just realized that spells the word ask. Ask yourself. Oh my God, that's the new title for this video. Ask yourself, what do I have? What can I do? What do I need to do? Wow, that needs to be a t-shirt. I see some merch coming. Bye.